Okay, we're going to get started here. A few announcements. We have two board members that are not in attendance this evening. Mrs. Melton and Mr. Schaefer could not be here this evening. And a few opening remarks that they make every week. As a reminder, masks are still required this evening, and the Springford Area Board of Education believes the community has the right to bring before the board issues and concerns they may have about items on the agenda or about things in general which affect the district or their children. At the beginning of each meeting, the Springford residents will have an opportunity to share concerns and comment about items on agenda items only. Each community member on Zoom and in person will have up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. Prior to adjournment, there will be an additional opportunity for the community to comment publicly. Again, each community member on Zoom and in person will have up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. Please note, as in past meetings, I will do my best to balance comments from those in person and from those on Zoom. This meeting is being filmed to be broadcast on community cable channels and online. Individuals intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. I respectfully ask that those individuals in attendance this evening are respectful, courteous, and civil during public comment and throughout the meeting. I also just want to comment about the huge success of the homecoming day itself, and a thank you to all of those that were involved in making it such a great day. From what I've heard from students, that they had a wonderful time on Saturday night. The parade was wonderful and the picnic was awesome. So thank you very much to the SFEA for doing that as well. And do our student reps have any comments this evening?
There are no announcements this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Probably.
Yeah, is there someone here that could maybe move this divider here to the side more so that we could, Mr. Hunter, thank you. Just want to make sure that everybody over here on this end is able to see what's happening here. A little better. Hey, everybody from over there, where we couldn't see you before, welcome to the meeting. Okay, that's great, thank you. All right, so we'll start with public to be heard on agenda items only. As I said, I'll look to balance, so let's start with in person. Are there any comments this evening in person on agenda items only? Please be sure to reference the agenda item that you're referring to. Can you pull that mic down a little bit? I'm sorry, we can't hear you. And can you, it's not on. I also need you to state your name and address for the.
My name is James. Oh, no, sorry. My name is James Schauman, 199 North Limerick Road. The agenda I wanted to talk on was on the PCR test and the quarantining of the children.
Can we clarify which, do we know which item that is?
It's towards the end of the
There's an agenda item to talk about the testing program, the funding for the testing program. It's a new other business.
New other business, B. 10B. Okay, thank you. Sorry to.
Can I go? I'm here today to talk about this illegal experiment being done on our children with these PCR tests and quarantine and the other medical devices considered the mass device. During this unprecedented time, mixed messages have been handed down from the so-called science experts and government officials. The school districts cannot use our children for this experiment. There are 17 other school districts in Pennsylvania that are no longer participating in this illegal experiment. It would be considered a war crime and violate Nuremberg Code 10 standards created in response to a human rights violation of World War II. From the book, if you remember what a book is, called Doctors of Infamy, the story of Nazi medical crimes in which Nuremberg Code 1947 is discussed, quote, amongst other requirements, this document insinuates the requirement of voluntary informed consent of the human subject. This goes over top of everything of what Wolf's doing and everything. The duty and responsibility for ascertaining the quality of consent rests upon each individual who initiates, directs, or engages in the experiment. It is a personal duty and responsibility which may not be delegated to another impunity. The WHO recommends only asymptomatic people actually wear masks, take the PCR test, or do any of this stuff. Quarantining kids goes against the Nuremberg Code, goes against your own vaccination requirements.
Can you stay focused on the specific item, which is about an approval?
About the PCR test and the quarantine of the kids, it's exactly what I'm talking about. It goes against the Nuremberg Code. Your medical discrimination, what you were talking about before, where you're going to let vaccinated kids not have to be quarantined and not have to take the PCR test. Now but the people who don't have the vaccine, they're going to have to be quarantined. This is discrimination, 100%. It's medical discrimination. This is what the Nuremberg Code was totally made for. So you can no longer the government can no longer do
This is
medical
not what this
experience on
agenda
anyone.
item is about.
So you can say PCR tests aren't and the COVID tests aren't or anything, but this is all a medical experiment.
okay,
All goes
sir.
with the mask.
Sir, can you go back to the specific action item? Putting aside the policies and health and safety, but specific to the action item.
You're breaking the law. What else more do I need? You're teaching discrimination in schools. It's totally about the
Okay.
PCR test
right.
and the quarantine. You can't make a healthy
Sir,
kid
thank
be
you. You have not
quarantined.
stayed on the agenda item.
It's 100% on the agenda
If
item.
you want to maybe save those comments for the end of the meeting, but you're veering off.
It's on the agenda. You guys brought
It's
it up
going
last
off
time
the-
on the
it's going
agenda
off the agenda
about
item.
the
Thank you, sir.
discrimination
Thank
between the
you.
two kids.
End it. Thank you.
And what?
Comments are done. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before you get started, as I said from the beginning, it is a conversation on agenda items only. If you do veer off those agenda items, we will ask you to save your comment for the end of the meeting when it is public comment and open at that time for a more general discussion. Thank you.
John Yanchuk, 12 Edmonds Drive, Royersford. I just want to take the opportunity on agenda item 10B also to thank Dr. Rizzo for his presentation last week and the discussion that the board had around the Test to Stay program. As you know, most of the experts in the field of epidemiology and virology suggest a layered, mitigated approach of multiple tools to keep our kids in school, which is really, at the end of the day, what we all want. I think this program will be great. I hope that we actually expand it and test as many kids as we can until we get to the end of this thing. That will keep them all in school, that will keep them all healthy, and I think it will be fantastic. And thank you again, Mr. Rizzo, for recommending this to the board. I would urge you all to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from anyone in the room? Okay, then with that, we'll go to Zoom. Nothing on Zoom, Rich? Okay, we'll move on to the rest of the meeting then for this evening. Okay, so we'll move on to the first presentation for this evening, and it is my honor and privilege to present our very own Mr. Tom DeBello with the PSBA 12-year Honor Roll Certificate of Appreciation. During Tom's tenure with the district, he has been actively involved and advocate for a number of programs and initiatives in the district, and I would like to just name a few, even though the list could go on pretty long. Over 12 years, you do have an opportunity to be invested and do participate in a number of things that help the district to grow. A couple of the big highlights that I see when I look back on Tom's tenure would be the hybrid learning over at Spring City and Royersford. He was instrumental in implementing that and rolling that out in both places. He was also instrumental in restructuring the business office and hiring a CFO, Mr. Fink. Also rolling out the 7-year budget and the 7-year budget forecast model, which I believe was also even presented at PSBA in Harrisburg. Additionally, he was a very big part of growing the facilities for physical education, but also for the performing arts, and has been a supporter of the performing arts and the strings program, the instrument upgrades, all of that over time. We all know that he's been on the finance committee for, I don't know how many years. The whole time I've been here, he's been on the finance committee, has worked to eliminate a huge deficit. He's structured to pay off $200 million of district debt. He has been supportive of the expansion of programming and enrollment, the growing of enrollment at the Western Center. He has been here during the time that Springford has gained ground in terms of its ranking by the state and nationally. All of those things, they don't happen overnight. They happen with a lot of time and a lot of effort. As I said, the list could go on and on and on. Those are my highlights that I see during my time for his tenure here. And with that, I do have the certificate from PSBA that I hope we'll see framed and in your office for 12 years. So I think, you know, where everybody's position is doesn't really matter. The point is, this is an individual who's given a lot of his time and talents to this district. And I do applaud him for his never-ending efforts to try and help to make the district better, to move Springford forward. And for that, I'm very grateful for the 12 years you've been here and what you've accomplished. So thank you very much.
Now, if I can get him to ever do something on the property committee, I'll be very happy then.
Not tonight, Mr. Jackson. It's all about Mr. DeVallo. But thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Colleen. It's been a long run and we have accomplished a lot over a 12-year period. I'm very excited about where Springford has grown to, not only being recognized in the state, but actually nationally. So, you know, I've, like you said, I was part of a great team over the years, and I was really excited to be able to see Springford grow, and the accomplishments are endless. And I think that you know, the best way to gauge it is when you look at the housing market, people are trying to get into Springford every day. I mean, houses don't last long. I mean, people are constantly asking, you know, looking for homes, and they want to be part of the Springford School District. So it's a great honor, and you know, thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I think we're going to have some other fantastic presentations this evening. It's really great that we're having all of this good news. Mr. Krakauer is going to recognize some students for us and their incredible achievements here. We have 5 students that are semifinalists in the 2022 National Merit Scholarship Program and 13 students that are commended students. And then we have 2 more students for the College Board National Hispanic Recognition Program of Scholars. So there are a number of presentations this evening, and we're excited to see these students come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo and the school board, for allowing us to share outstanding achievements from the class of 2022. The first 5 students that we're going to recognize are 2022 National Merit Scholarship semifinalists. Springford Senior High School is pleased to announce that 5 of our senior students have been proclaimed semifinalists in the 2022 National Merit Scholarship Program. What this means is that these 5 students were among the 16,000 highest performers out of more than 1.6 million students in the country who took the 2020 PSATs last October. These high-scoring semifinalists represent less than 1% of high school seniors. To continue in the competition and be considered for monetary award, these semifinalists had to take the next steps and fulfill several requirements to advance to the finalist level. submit a detailed scholarship application, be endorsed and recommended by a high school official, write an essay, and earn SAT scores that confirm their earlier performance on the PSATs. They will all be notified in early February if they have advanced to the finalist stage. Monetary scholarship winners will be notified in March. We are very proud of these students, and at this time, we would like to call them to the front and recognize each of these students. So when I do call your name, please come forward. We do have a certificate for you, and then we'd like you to stand right here in front of the school board. Jacob Collier. Arnav Gupta. Arnav could not be with us tonight. Braden Kryarchevich. Raul Palala. And Lisbeth Verghese. Our next group of students we'd like to recognize are the 2022 National Merit Scholarship commended students. Springford Senior High School is pleased to announce that 13 of our senior students have been commended students in the 2022 National Merit Scholarship Program. Each of these 13 students has been named a commended student for being among the 34,000 highest performers out of 1.6 million students who took the PSATs last October. Although they will not continue in the 2022 competition for National Merit Scholarship Awards, these scholastically talented seniors have demonstrated outstanding potential for academic success. Springford is very proud of these students and would like to present each of them with a letter of commendation for the National Merit Scholarship Program. Again, when I do call you up to be recognized, please come forward and stand in front of the school board, please. Our first student, Jacob Doherty. Joshua Feingold. Araja Goyal. Our next student could not be with us tonight. I believe she's not here, is Evelyn Hergahan. Abhimanyu Kandawal. Sean Lambert. We're gonna have to turn this way for our next student. Allison McVeigh. Ryder Pham. Justin Russell. Rhea Shah. Naveen Suresh. I do not believe our next student was able to make it either, but Peyton Swanson. And our last student was not able to make it tonight also, and that is Alexander Wasco. Springford Senior High School is pleased to announce that 2 of our senior students have been named College Board National Hispanic Recognition Program Scholars. This program is to honor and connect academically excellent students to universities across the country. Students are recognized for their academic achievements and outstanding performance on PSATs. As National Hispanic Recognition Program winners, the College Board highlights their achievements to more than 1,500 colleges and other scholarship opportunities that are available at some universities. We are very proud of these 2 students. We would like to call them to the front and recognize these 2 students. Our first student, Joshua Feingold. One more picture, right? Alexandra McPeak. Thank you.
And I'll say thanks to all of you. That's amazing, the number of students that we just honored tonight. And when you think about how many students took that PSAT, just such an accomplishment. Thank you so much for trying hard and for doing your best and for, showing off Springford. It really is making us proud. Absolutely. All the accolades to you. Thank you. And with that, we're going to move on to board and committee reports. So Mr. Schaefer is not here tonight. Okay, bye, everybody. You guys want to move over too, or before we get started, just to bring everybody up? Come on. Right, back to the meeting. So we'll go with the board and committee reports. Mr. Schaefer couldn't be here tonight, so he will give his update on extracurricular next month. Also, PSBA was on for last month and he didn't have a report, but I did ask for him to maybe revisit that and was hoping to learn more about the Pennsylvania split from the national group. I also look forward to hearing next month about the feedback on the presentation and the experience that's going on. Unless, Dr. Mary, is there anything that you would want to share about that or explain, put out there about what's happening with that presentation?
Sure. Our department was honored by being able to present at the conference this year. It was supposed to be in person, but it was then switched to virtually. So our department did a session that highlighted our instructional coaching model that we do within the district. So we're excited that that was done virtually and it's taking place this week.
Great. So at some point when it's finished, maybe we could hear about the experience. And I just want to say an extra special thank you for that, because since I've been here, Springford is a leader, as we know. As I just mentioned, since Mr. DeBello's been here during his tenure, it's rose through the rankings, both statewide and nationally. And I've been out to that PSBA conference a number of times in person, along with Ms. Fazzini and with Mr. DeBello. And we really wanted Springford to do a presentation. We talked about that quite a bit, to highlight something good that we're doing here. So, because you have your choice, right? So I'm really happy that you were able to do that. And I do look forward to hearing about the experience and some feedback from doing it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. So then we also have next legislative, and I believe that Dr. Wright has taken on that position for Mrs. Melton. So would you like to give us the report for legislative, please?
Absolutely. So the Montgomery County School Board Legislative Committee met on Wednesday, October 20th. It met virtually to discuss the happenings in Harrisburg. Some of the things that were discussed is House Bill 1332, which is currently working its way through chambers. This is a bill about online curriculum transparency. The concerns that we have is that it is excessive when there are already mandates in place for transparency required by districts regarding curriculum, and that maintaining this much information on the district website would require many man hours by our districts. So that's a little bit about 1332. We also discussed the fair funding lawsuit. The trial is set for November 12th. There will be a rally in Harrisburg set for the first day of the trial. So I have information about the rally if anyone's interested, and also if anyone is interested in riding, there's a bus leaving from Pottstown to attend to that. And then the proposed charter school regulations addressing many of the concerns about transparency, ethic, and accountability, but does not address the funding. So currently, both Representative Jesse Topper and Representative Joe Cerisi have reform bills pending. They're working on a compromise right now, and we are encouraged to keep the message going that charter reform is needed. I have more resources for that if anyone is interested on the board. And also, we congratulated Upper Perkiomen School Board Director Peggy Pennypacker. Many of you may know her for her appointment to the PIAA board, and she wanted to encourage board, if you have any questions about the PIAA, to reach out to her. So that was it.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Wright? Okay, moving on then. Mr. DeBella, was there an MCIU meeting or not yet?
We're not meeting in October.
That's okay. Then we'll move on to Dr. Murray and her report as Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. I would first like to start by saying thank you to the school board, Springford community administration and staff for the honor of serving as Assistant Superintendent. Springford is a tremendous community, one that I'm very proud to be part of. I'm humbled by the opportunity to serve as Assistant Superintendent, and I promise to do my best in the role to support the educational excellence that Springford is known for. As Assistant Superintendent, I'm striving to be transparent and communicative with our board, staff, students, and community, and I look forward to working together to make the exceptional reputation of Springford while advancing us forward as the educational world continues to evolve. I'd like to take a minute to thank and recognize SFEA for the community picnic after the homecoming parade. SFEA offered a variety of snacks, hot dogs, pretzels, pizza, etc., free to the community before the game began, while students, alumni, and families had the opportunity to connect, laugh, and overall just enjoy the traditions of homecoming that we were so desperately missing last year. Members of SFEA hustled, grilling hot dogs and serving the community with a welcoming smile. I would also like to recognize our students and community for their successful homecoming weekend with an impressive 42-10 win over O&J. Our football team certainly showed up for the win. I was proud to look around and see the generations of Springford community members, alumni, students, and family coming together as a community. Thank you to each of our sports teams and our activities, Springford activities, band and community members that participated in the parade. Both our high school and middle school bands sounded incredible, and our cheerleaders and student spirit leaders brought the whole event together. Thank you to our RCTV crew and students for their leadership in covering the event for the weekend. And finally, one more recognition to Coach Brubaker, who was presented with the game ball for the 100th win as Springford head coach. Also in some of our elementary buildings last week, the Artist in Residence program was in full swing. Artist Kevin Reese spent the week of October 18th at Limerick Elementary School, where the theme was connections, as we wanted students to feel connected to their peers, teachers, school, and community. Limerick's Media Center lobby is now the permanent home to the brightly colored mobiles, and in similar fashion, students at Royersford Elementary School participated in the creation of a glass mosaic kindness tree, which will be displayed in the lobby of Royersford. The finished product will depict a multi-seasonal tree with birds and animals. The finished product, Shifting gears, we've also begun the comprehensive planning process. The comprehensive plan is a district plan that focuses on continuous improvement. Every 3 years, the comprehensive plan must be updated and submitted to PDE. We've started the process by establishing an inclusive committee with a diverse group of stakeholders, including administrators, teachers from every level, parents and guardians, community members, and local businesses. There have been 3 committees established. The first committee is a steering committee. We met for the first time on October 11th and will be directly responsible for developing the comprehensive plan. In this meeting, we reflected on areas such as the district mission and vision and educational values, and the next step in the process is to conduct a needs assessment, which will lead to action plans for improvement. The feedback and review committee will be responsible for reviewing the drafts and providing additional input for consideration along the way. And the final committee is the Professional Development Task Force. The Professional Development Task Force has already been established in 2019, meets approximately 3 times a year, and helps drive some of our professional development efforts. The goal with regards to comprehensive planning is to finalize the draft of the comprehensive plan in December and post it for public review in January for final board approval in February. So we are moving very quickly on that. And finally, we're excited to share an amazing accomplishment by one of our students who graduated last year. If you recall, at the high school, we offer AP Research. AP Research is an interdisciplinary course where students explore an academic topic or problem of individual interest. During this course, students conduct a year-long research-based investigation to address a research question. From the graduating class of 2021, Navia Murahari's performance on the AP research exam in May 2021 was so superior that it falls into a rather select category. Navia's research included an experiment to determine the impact of ambient sound when layered subliminally into lo-fi music. Navia not only received the top score of 5, but was also one of only 375 students in the world to earn every point possible on the AP research exam, receiving the maximum score on each portion of the exam. So tremendous accomplishment. We're extremely proud of Navia and the AP research program. We would also be remiss if we didn't recognize the AP research teachers who supported Navia along the way in her research. Ms. Jackie Ritter and Julie Korchowski have done a fantastic job in preparing students for their tasks, and we're confident that this program will lead many future students to success in their next steps as well. And that's my report.
I just want to say from personal experience, that class is one of the best that's here. And my daughter was fortunate to have both of those teachers and have that seminar and then the research. Also a 5 on the exam, but the skills that she walked away with, that she has taken with her to college, they've already been commented on. That like, she's just so much further along. So if you can take that capstone and encourage your children to do it, because it really does prepare them for the future. So thank you so much to both of them. Couldn't help myself on that. He knew that was coming to me.
Well, she was in that
Oh,
class.
okay. Any other questions or comments for Dr. Mary's report this evening? Okay, thank you, Dr. Mary. Okay, and Mr. Fitzgerald, do we have a solicitor's report this evening?
Just briefly, in a bit of a good news report, Doctors Murray and Giambattista, and Dr. Giambattista is set to begin in late November, but both of them were duly sworn in today down in Norristown at the Court of Common Pleas by Judge Wendy Rothstein, my former partner at Fox Rothschild. So with regard to our 2 new assistant superintendents, they are official as of today because they are now officially commissioned officers as a result of that oath. So good news to report.
Well, congratulations to both of you. And we will look forward to having you join us in the board retreat that I had mentioned previously, along with our now permanent in place, Mr. Rizzo, Tina Valletto from the MCIU, who all of us on the board know, had suggested that we had another board retreat after the new superintendent was named, and now with 2 new assistant superintendents coming on. And whatever happens in a month or so, that we'll be able to hit the ground running in January with everybody in place and the team in place and have a really successful board retreat. January 15th, mark your calendars. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Fitzgerald? Right, then we'll move through the agenda. Minutes, A and B, is there a motion?
So moved.
The second? Second. Questions or comments?
Question. Sorry. Regarding Ms. Bender, where are we with her replacement? I mean, we're in the midst of our students preparing their college apps. So are we, and maybe Ms. Lees can address this.
We are currently in the process of the interviews, and hopefully you should have a recommendation within the next few weeks.
All right, thank you.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Personnel, A through G. Question or motion?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments on personnel? A through G. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those motions carry. Finance, A through K. Question, or is there a motion?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments on A through K, finance? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Property A and B. Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Property and curriculum, A through C, or I'm sorry, programming and curriculum, A through C.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Conferences and workshops, A through F. Is there a motion
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? I will separate E and F. I have a question on E and F. Let me, what am I saying there, guys? I have a question on E and F. One of the. We're on conferences and workshops. That's fine. E and F. We have two people that I believe are going to the same conference. And I know Mr. Jackson and I have addressed this, both of us have addressed this in the past when we were sending multiple people to the same conferences or workshops. Is there a need here for two people to go? Can Mr. Hunter or Mr. Rizzo comment on that?
Yes. There is a need. These are requirements for their pesticide certification, their continuing education credits once they get to the conference that goes towards their license.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments on conferences and workshops A through F? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Other business, there's a first reading of policy 218.3, and then there's new other business, which is B, and that is related. Well, I think everybody knows what that is. The administration recommends the approval of an after-school COVID-19 rapid testing clinic. The total cost would not exceed $65,000. Funding will come from the unassigned budget funds. Mr. Rizzo, can you elaborate on this item, please? Since it was not on the work session last month or
Sure.
last week.
Sure. Excuse me. So as I mentioned last week, we're working with Montgomery County to establish a test to stay protocol or modified quarantine protocol. With that requires some additional testing. So we're doing three parts of our testing, as I mentioned last week. One of them is symptomatic testing, students that are ill or present with symptoms, not necessarily COVID, but they present with symptoms that could be COVID. And we're also looking at a test out of quarantine, which means that a child would be quarantined, but they can shorten their quarantine time if they remain asymptomatic. Excuse me. And then the last one is the test to stay program, which is the modified quarantine piece. So within the school, they would like school-based teams to manage the test to stay program, the modified quarantine program. They're there. They test at a cadence of about every other day based on the data identified through that day 5 through 7 window. They're already in the school. It's convenient for families. It's convenient for students, and it's convenient for our staff because they're already in the building. For the tests out of quarantine and for the symptomatic testing, they felt it was, when I say they, I mean our school nurses, as I work with them on this, but also Montgomery County, we talked about what that could look like. Our school nurses and Chief Boyer felt like for us to do those two components, the symptomatic testing, which means they have symptoms, and the test out of quarantine, a after school central site made the most sense. So this motion is to pay for the hourly rate for nurses and other staff that have been identified to work 2 hours a day, 2 days for the remainder of the school year. That'd be 6 staff members per clinic for 2 hours on a Tuesday and on a Thursday. And this is a not to exceed cost. It's cost out for the rest of the school year. So as testing declines and if participation declines, we would not utilize all of those funds. So the idea is that this would be, if we need all that staff, all 6 for 2 hours for both days for the rest of the school year, this would be the cost. Anything less than that, and the cost would go down. So we believe it aligns nicely with where we are with modified quarantine. And we believe that this is a way to keep our students back in school and not bring students that are sick into school to be tested. This allows them to be tested curbside service. They can pull up, get the test, they can leave, they'll be notified via email.
And is it true that the county is still paying for the testing?
Correct, yes. Because we signed on with the MOU with Montgomery County Office of Public Health, they pay for all of the supplies that we need for the testing. This is purely to pay for the staff to do it.
So this purely is for staffing.
Correct.
Can we separate these two items?
Well, the other business, the first read is just, we're not voting on that. So this is, we're just going to vote on the new other business. That first policy will come back to us as a second read in November.
So I'm just a little, not that I just thought that this, when we spent money on something like this was something we usually had to discuss before we put it on for a vote. I thought we made a sort of a decision a month or so back that we weren't going to do this anymore.
Well, that is true. You're very correct about that. And when Mr. Rizzo brought this up the other day in a full disclosure, full transparency, I did say to him, I don't like to do the rush items. He hadn't known previously that this was, or what the cost would be associated with this here. The alternative was to wait until November. And I did have, as I've expressed in the last several meetings, concerns about quarantining healthy kids. So I didn't want to do that if we could reduce those numbers by doing this program. But at the same time, and Mr. Rizzo can attest to this, I did say that if the board felt rushed, it could be tabled to for more discussion and to do it at another time. But my concern was really about quarantining kids unnecessarily in light of the numbers that we had last year. I don't want to get anywhere near that. And I know the rest of us don't either. We want them educated. We want them in school. If this is a help for that, I'm okay with it.
Which I totally agree. I also do not want kids quarantining any longer than necessary. But even if we don't have this budgeted item approved, they could, if we decide to go through with if we're doing a test out, they could still get tested elsewhere, even if we're not providing it. Is that not so, or?
Chief and I actually talked about that a little bit today. I believe that we can for testing out of quarantine, not for the test to stay, I don't believe, but I need to get clarification from Montgomery County on that. And just in full disclosure, the test to stay program, which is that modified quarantine piece, that's done in the buildings. So if you weren't comfortable approving this tonight, we would still move forward with the test to stay program. It would be more challenging for us to do the test out of quarantine and symptomatic testing. That would be the piece there.
So when is the program due to start, by the way, with the Montgomery County Department of Health and the
Sure, that's a fantastic question. So we saw the first draft of their guidance this past Friday, which I shared with the board. We're going to review again this Thursday. They wanted the superintendents to have some feedback to take a look at it. They were targeting first week of November to be able to roll this out. That's next week. So we need to make sure, and we have been working concurrently while Montgomery County was creating their guidance. Our school nurses and Chief Boyer were creating our own guidance, and that we met this morning, and they are now aligning what their practice was or what their recommendations were with Montgomery County's, so that we could have a conversation about, how close we are, how are we dealing with the consent, how are we dealing with notifying families. Those pieces we're working out now. If we're able to start next week, fantastic. If we're not, we would anticipate the week after we would start. But we could start as early as next week, providing Montgomery County gives their final okay on this.
Thank you. So the test to stay, which is done on like day 1, 3, and 5 in school, that's in school. That has no bearing on this at all, this voting on this. The other two, and I apologize if I'm just, because it's the first time I'm looking at this and one clarification because I was not aware of anything other than the request for $65,000 for COVID-19 rapid testing. The symptomatic testing would be for students and staff that are symptomatic or just students
It could be for students and staff and
that are symptomatic?
that are symptomatic, correct.
Okay, and my understanding, unless things have changed and everything's changing all the time, is that if you are symptomatic, you can get the rapid test with free of charge at other sites. So that, I mean, that's my understanding of that.
You could get a test at other sites, but I'm told it's 24 to 48 hours to get those results. I'm not sure that's 100% accurate. Ours, you get within 15 minutes.
Right, okay, so the experience that I know of was within the 30 minutes and
Okay.
it was not an appointment, but I said, things change all the time, but that would not, so if the symptomatic, that's, we should, I'm just looking at with how quickly we need to move on this. So then the other one was the test out of quarantine. So that is for a student who has been quarantined due to a close contact, was asymptomatic or symptomatic?
Asymptomatic,
Asymptomatic.
yes.
And for them to be able to return, how would that be different than the test to stay?
So testing out of quarantine, the student is home and they are quarantined, they're not in the school. Testing to stay, they remain in the school. And essentially, we would be doing away with the test out of quarantine part unless parents choose to quarantine instead of participating in the test to stay program. There would be little need for the test out of quarantine if they participate in the test to stay program. Test to stay program, that what they're submitting to, or what they're consenting to is their child being testing every other day up through day 5 through 7 of what their quarantine would be. And as long as they test negative and they're asymptomatic, they would stay in school. Testing out of quarantine, they're sent home to quarantine. And when they get into day 5 through 7 window, they could take a COVID test. And if they test negative, they can come back on day 8. So one of them are in school, one of them are home, and it's going to come down to family preference.
Okay, so the test out of quarantine is really replacing the other testing that we do, not the rapid testing, but what most people would go through with I don't have symptoms, I've quarantined, it's been so many days, and now I can take the other test. So again, something that people could get outside of school. So the 65,000 would be strictly to pay the hourly rate. And could you again repeat, like when you were talking or what you're talking about it? Again, I apologize because I didn't have all this in front of me, and I'm concerned, and I'm a little hesitant to agree to 65,000 until I have all the information.
Sure, not a problem. So we decided, again, when I say we, I mean the school nurses, Chief Boyer, myself, decided that 2 days a week seemed to be the most appropriate amount of days to do the testing after school from 4 to 6. Tuesday, Thursday made the most sense to us. And the reason for that is if a student goes home sick, they have to be symptom-free for a certain period of time anyway, as part of our regular sick process. So waiting a day to get a test, if let's say they're sent home on a Monday, or they don't go to school on a Monday because they're sick, they're not feeling well, then they would probably wait a day anyway. They would get their test on Tuesday and they could be back on Wednesday. So instead of being out for 10 days, which would be the recommendation if you're symptomatic, you would be out for at the most 1.5 days. So we picked Tuesday, Thursday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's after school. The plan is to have it at Limerick Elementary School, and we would just do a curbside service process. They'd pull up, they'd get the test, and they could leave. And then they would, we get the results in 15 minutes, and then they would be notified via email if they were positive or negative.
And then I just want to clarify something also. Vaccinated or unvaccinated, correct? Because there have been a number of breakthroughs even for those people that have been vaccinated.
So at this point, Montgomery County is only recommending this for unvaccinated. I think we can have that conversation as a district, what we want to do, but their recommendation is this is for unvaccinated because vaccinated individuals do not need quarantine unless they're symptomatic.
But if they're symptomatic, then.
If they're symptomatic, then
Then
they are
they-
recommended to get a test, yes.
And so they could be part of this program at that point.
I would have to get clarification on how flexible we can be as Springford whenever we're working with the MOU of Montgomery County. I would have to check on that.
That doesn't make any sense. If they're systematic,
No, symptomatic.
yeah, systematic, right,
That's Greece.
right, yeah.
Symptomatic.
Right, it's systematic.
Symptomatic. I'll say
Symptomatic,
it for you.
If they look sick.
if they look sick. What difference does it matter if they're vaccinated or not?
It could be a breakthrough.
Well, no, I'm not talking about breakthrough. If they're displaying symptoms, right? And we send them home, and how's that different than another kid that's not vaccinated, that's displaying symptoms and we send them home?
Well, if they're vaccinated and they're not feeling well, it's recommended to get a test, but they would follow our normal, I think our normal sick protocol. I think we could do whatever we want. I think. we can do
No,
whatever we want,
yeah, I mean,
but-
it's not making sense because we're sending a kid home because they're not feeling well and they're displaying symptoms, correct?
Correct, yes.
Right, so,
Or parents are keeping them home, yes.
right, so if they're vaccinated and they're not feeling well and they're displaying symptoms, we're sending them home.
Correct.
So then why wouldn't it still fall into the same process?
Well, they could probably fall under the symptomatic testing
Right.
process.
So then it could fall into the after-school rapid testing, the test to come back, correct?
Well, what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Well, I'm
Whether
sorry
we
if I'm
can do
doing
it,
that.
whether we can do it or not, I just have to get clarification from Montgomery
Well,
County.
right, well,
And
we need
and quite frankly, Mr. Fitzgerald, in terms of how much latitude we have as a district.
yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to follow the logic here.
And I would make a motion that we table this
I agree.
until we get our arms wrapped around this.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion table. Was there a second to that motion? All right, so we close debate. We vote on the table.
So it would be, there's a motion and a second to table it. So all in favor of, Tabling.
Tabling this motion. Yep.
say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
No.
Could you please clarify to people that we're tabling the 65,000, not continuing to go ahead with the Department of Health, Montgomery County Department of Health? Just clarification for the community.
But he did say that that was part of,
No, we're tabling the spending of the 65,000 for the after-school COVID.
That's correct. Yes.
We're still continuing on with the, trying to work with Montgomery County to reduce quarantining. by-
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah.
but you did say without that 65, that there would be, is there an impact?
Well, there will be an impact on staffing if we're going to roll that program out. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait to do the symptomatic testing piece and the test out of quarantine piece at a site. But as far as testing the stay, that we can move forward with.
Okay. All right, then, we will move into board comment at this point. Just a couple of reminders, as I stated earlier, our board retreat is January 15th. We did have a President's Council meeting on October 20th, during which time I did not see Mrs. Sullivan on that Zoom, and I apologize for not seeing you there. I want to say thank you for being there and being part of that meeting, where we did speak with a number of, also Mrs. Melton was there and Mr. DeBello was there. And we did speak with a number of the home and school, the booster club, the athletics, music, SNAP. There were a number of people that were on there and sharing with us some really good news. I think one of the themes that I heard during the meeting, Mr. Rizzo, you were on there, Mrs. Bickert was on there, Ms. Crew was on there. One of the themes that I heard is that volunteerism appears to be up in a number of places. There's still struggles in some, but it's up, and there is just a flow of creativity. There are a lot of new people that want to get involved because they've maybe felt detached or not really part of Springford yet, so they're coming in, and they're just, the home and schools are tapping them as a great resource with lots of new ideas. And really, the home and schools are flourishing in our different schools. So really grateful for that opportunity to have that conversation with all of them. The next meeting, there's a save the date that went out for potentially January 19th. They do prefer to do it on the Zoom platform. It is easier to get a number of people together that way. So the only other question I have was about the meeting schedule. I do think we have to have a little discussion about that. Next week is really tight, and curriculum and technology and community relations are both scheduled for the 2nd, which is difficult for some members to be there. The 1st doesn't work either because there is an important meeting at JOC, which would again pull people away. So I was looking to move community relations if possible to the 3rd. And I know Mrs. Fazzini was trying to find something to
I
do
think
with.
we'll move curriculum and technology to the 3rd also.
You can do that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we would like to make that adjustment and get that advertised then, that both of those meetings will be on the 3rd, same times, but on the 3rd to avoid those conflicts. Thank you, Mrs. Fazzini, for working that out. I know that was a conflict in the schedule. That's all I have for board comment. Are there any other board comments this evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to do a little fact check here. One of the public comments earlier, no student is being forced to take any COVID test. And all testing is voluntary and requires parental consent, so.
That is correct, Mrs. Fazzini. Thank you for sharing that.
Quick question, Mr. Rizzo, any update on the Parent Advisory Council?
Yes, I believe Katie Smith, last week, she reached out to a couple of parents to work with getting that group started, getting it set up. Last week, they also had their first Zoom session where they talked about IEP and the MDE process. And I believe they had a nice showing, went really well. And then I believe that there's been some communication between the parents and Ms. Smith. I don't know to what extent, but it is up and moving and we're moving forward.
Great, thanks.
I got 1 or 2 items. I'll make it 2. I received a lot of emails and phone calls from last week's meeting regarding my comments regarding EDI. And I just want to clarify a couple of things. I support the initiative of EDI and associate committees. I do ask a lot of questions because I want to advance the task. And I look forward to the findings that come about in January of 2022. The first item. Second item is, do we have an update on whatever happened on Friday? I mean, it's been talked about and written about and asked and smoke signals. Is there any update any update from the district? We did send out a communication. So I think we should provide the community something as an update.
Sure, absolutely. So referring to last Thursday, correct? Which is part of our Spirit Week and the USA Day, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I was traveling, so yes, sir.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we did have USA Day as part of our Spirit Day last week. We did send out a notification on Friday. I sent out a notification on Friday about the events of the day and about how, again, and what I said in my communication was Spirit Week is about promoting unity and generating excitement and positive culture. And USA Day became something, in some cases, became something a little bit different than that. And my goal was to talk about what our goals were. And we had a few students that stepped outside of the expectations that were set forth by Dr. Weidenbaugh and Dr. Collier. When we announced what the Spirit Week was supposed to look like, they did illustrate these are the expectations. And some of the expectations were not met. When it comes to student attire, there is a dress code, and some of those dress codes were violated. When it comes to the props and banners and flags and things that were used, they really should not have been in the school, and we didn't necessarily do what we needed to do to remove them from the environment. So that's something we need to work on. We need to increase our vigilance in terms of keeping our schools safe, and we need to be very consistent with following the guidelines that we set forth. So as we move forward, those are the steps we have to take. Because again, it's about Again, it's about promoting unity and togetherness and a positive culture. And some of our students walked away on Thursday and our parents walked without that feeling. So it kind of worked counter to what our goals were.
Thank you.
Any other board comment this evening? Okay, with that, then we'll move to public to be heard. I think we're going to start on the Zoom, just because I started in person last time and I want to balance pretty well. So, Rich, do we have anybody? Okay, go ahead.
Naya, you may now make public comment. Please state your first and last name as well as your full address. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Naya Rollins. I live at 430 Elm Street in Royersford. So my comment was about the whole Spirit Week thing as well. And I just found it interesting that in the last school board meeting, and I think it was last June, there was an issue with a BLM sticker being in the 6th grade building, and parents were complaining that politics should have no place in schools. And you guys agree, Mr. DeBello had said BLM was like a new flavor of the month, like all those types of comments were made. And then they wear Trump apparel, which is political, but an email is being sent. And all it's saying is we should talk about these type of questions with our children. There was never in that email saying that should be prohibited and it shouldn't be allowed. I just find it like interesting how when issues with Black people are involved, it's always political, it shouldn't be allowed, but Trump apparel is allowed. Because when I was a freshman, Trump got elected president. So Trump apparel has been worn for many years and nobody has done anything about it. So I'm just wondering why now is it an issue? Because it was never talked about before, and that's political attire. So I just wanted to see the feedback about that.
Liz,
Okay,
You may-
just before you go any further, I do want to make a comment before this. We don't want to go down the wrong road here. The board needs to make sure that whatever is out there is consistent across the board. Consistency. The administrative guidelines or what happens there, that is where the school is. And as Mr. Rizzo has just said, you know, there needs to be a little bit more attention. Maybe the belt needs to be tightened a little bit, maybe some stricter guidelines. And that's what needs to happen. So that's where I understand you're going with that. And as far as the board is concerned, we'll listen to what's being said, but the idea here is that we are a board and we don't want to go down that wrong path, right? We want to make sure that whatever is done consistently and that we agree with what's being done consistently. But that really is the extent of where the board falls in that. We've dipped our toes many times, as many of you know, into a lot of different waters in the last year and a half, what have you. So as Mr. Rizzo said, the administration needs to do this.
I just wanted to add, because I think it's important for the discussion. And I can understand where the commenter had concern about an issue that occurred last week vis-a-vis what may have occurred in the past surrounding a BLM sticker. I think what's important to inform the discussion on that is the fact, when you look at the inquiry the administration has to take with regard to what is protected speech, what a student may wear is different than what are the rights or expectations for employees. That matter, as I recall, was an employee-based issue, which is a different First Amendment issue. So I don't know if you can, I understand where there's the desire to compare an apples to apples, but it was a different issue. And I just think it's important for the board to understand the differences in those protection issues.
Yeah, well, I think she's looking, I think her reference really is fairness. She's looking for fairness. That's what she's looking for. And I don't think that's needs to be done by the board. That needs to be done by the administration. It needs to be done by the high school. That's where it needs to happen. They manage the high school, you manage the students, you manage the issues. But I
Agreed.
think she's making reference to being fair.
Well, I agree, we need consistency across the board, but I just want to be clear, I never said BLM was flavor of the month. So I know, but I mean, but I agree that we have policies in place. They need to be followed across the board, and that's up to the administration to make sure it's enforced and taken care of.
I have one comment. I've been made aware that because of that issue, some of the students want to leave Springford. They do not want to continue going to school here because of that. And that's all I'll say, because if we lose students because of such actions or not enough restriction, that's going to hurt the district. So I think we need to keep a real tight lid on this and take care of it so that we don't have any incidents like this again.
That definitely is the goal. And as I said, administration needs to be sure that if there are stricter guidelines, if they have to spell it out, even if they think it's understood, if it needs to be spelled out, then that's what needs to happen. We don't want to lose any students. We don't want students to feel that it's unfair. We don't want anyone to feel slighted in any way, anyone across the board. So, okay, Rich, do we have others?
Liz, you may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself. State your first and last name as well as your full address. Liz.
Hi, my name is Liz Kepner, 19 Leatherwood Drive, Collegeville. In full transparency, I need to include a firsthand COVID account in Springford School District. My son was COVID case number 5 in the same 4th grade classroom at Oaks Elementary within 10 days. After my discussion with the nurse, it was discovered that the students were not sitting in their assigned seats at lunch, according to the seating chart. Multiple students switched seats to be closer to their friends during the first few days of school. The school was quarantining the wrong students from case number 1. Healthy students were forced to quarantine, and exposed still children were left in the classroom to spread COVID to more kids like mine. The Montgomery County Office of Public Health got involved, and because they could not correctly identify who had been exposed, they quarantined the remaining students in the classroom. If this is not in-school transmission, I don't know what possibly could be. This is an example of what happens when COVID is present in the classroom and lunchroom and close contacts are not removed. It's spread like wildfire. Last week, Mr. DeBello and Mr. Rizzo commented that kids have lives outside of school. This is not what happened in this specific classroom. The students were not on same sports teams, buses, or neighborhood playmates. This is what happens when COVID is in a lunchroom without masks. So this is exactly what will happen in a classroom without masks. This virus then ravaged my family. After my 4th grader got it, a few days later, my 2nd grader got it. A few days later, I was a breakthrough case, and I have never been this sick in my entire life. Then my 1st grader got it. My 1st grader has been out of school from September 30th and finally went back to school on Friday. This has been a terrible experience for my family, as I had to go back to teaching 3 kids at home again during this COVID time. I would really like all of you to please understand what this does to families. This is not a 2 or 3 day quarantine period. This ravages an entire family. I just want to get the word out that the only way to keep these kids safe is by having 6 feet of distance when they are not wearing masks. We have to do better at lunch. If we can do better at lunch, we can get these kids staying in school. Thank you.
Steve, you may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself, state your first and last name as well as your full address. Steve.
Steve Fry, 1711 Brook Drive, Royersford. There are several potential issues I would like to speak about tonight, but time is limited. I'll start with one of the most significant impediments to progress on the issues, at least from my perspective, is a better forum to do it. while the people who have a vested interest in the school are restricted to speaking a few minutes a month in these meetings, organizations who have no responsibility or accountability to the community get to have enormous influence on the school, and they do it with limited transparency. These meetings are not providing the amount of information nor the difficult discussions the community needs. Let's take one moderate example. Based on media reporting, about 4 months ago, at least one of the large teachers unions indicated they will provide tools and resources to defend teaching of what the union believes should be taught in schools, like things involving critical race theory. It has also been reported the union will do investigations into at least some of those who oppose their agenda. Once negative attention came to these issues, the materials became unavailable on the union website. So first, a powerful, well-funded teachers union providing tools to potentially be used on community members who voice opposition to controversial programs is a problem for the relationship between the school and the community. Second, to the best of my knowledge, teachers unions have no particular responsibility or accountability to this community. Why should they have a significant influence on what is taught at the school? Is that the role of a supposed labor union? There is something of a general social contract between the school and the community, which I think comes into play here. And when the school, well, representatives of the school or involved with the school, may take actions that threaten members of the community, there's kind of a break in the social contract that exists between the community and school. And I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And since there's I find it likely that there's a large number of staff belonging to the teachers union in the school. It seems like something we should be discussing, but we're really not. So, my 3 minutes are probably coming to a close. So I would hope the board will give some serious consideration for a better forum for transparency and the exchange of ideas and information. Thanks.
Kristen, you may now make public comment. Please unmute yourself. State your first and last name as well as your full address.
Good evening, Christian Kengor, 301 Mulberry Drive, Limerick, Pennsylvania. Just wanted to chime in and essentially agree with what Mr. Fitzgerald said and responding to Mr. Rizzo's communication on Friday. There is a huge difference between what a teacher or a faculty member is promoting versus what students are promoting. I think these kids all need to learn to tolerate and respect one another. Unity is a very big goal that obviously we don't see at all across the country. So it is a very divided country. So we should expect the same in our classrooms and the students who, if one's wearing something Obama or BLM and another's wearing something Trump, hey, these kids need to learn to tolerate that and respect that and get along with each other. We all have friends that are on the opposite sides of the political spectrum. That's expected that we not only have this friendships, but in work relationships that we foster those relationships and get along despite our differences. So thank you for hearing me out. Have a good night.
Teresa, you may now make public comment. Please state your first and last name as well as your full address. Teresa dropped out. Anne Marie, you may now make public comment.
Hi, my name is Anne Marie Holstein. I live at 221 Amanda Lane, Phoenixville, PA 19460. Just to follow up to the comment that Mr. Fitzgerald made, while students do have First Amendment rights, the Constitution has allowed courts at all levels to regulate this, which is why we tell students what they can and cannot wear within dress codes. So again, just to reiterate that I understand and appreciate that the administration needs to work through this with children. It is not a constitutional right of theirs to wear build the wall flags to school, which can be seen as intimidating their fellow students. And so I appreciate the swift and attention that is going to be brought to this within the administration, because of course, we all want equity and fairness, and we all want our students within the community to feel safe in their school building. Thank you.
Teresa, you may now make public comment. Please state your first and last name as well as your full address.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Teresa Westwood, 70 Plymouth Drive, Royersford, PA. I wanted to speak on two things. One, the case that just brought up, I think her name was Liz, talking about the lunch situation was awful to hear. I feel like we've talked about lunch multiple times and the fact that there really is no great solution to spread kids out. And the story that she shared with people not being in their assigned seats and COVID going all through her family really was, I felt for her. And I still am not really clear like what our solution is, but we're a couple months into the school year, entering a season where you have other respiratory and other infections coming in. And I really do hope that other solutions will be considered so something like that doesn't happen to another family. The second issue I know a couple other people spoke about was the issue at the high school last week. I don't have children that are high school age, but I saw multiple pictures circulating and was horrified by them. And I agree with what one of the women said earlier around Black Lives Matter stickers. It's like, we do need to be consistent, but I have to ask myself, like, how are those children even able to walk through the doors dressed in such a way? Like, what is the accountability going to be for the staff that was overseeing those students? And why was that allowed? I didn't see Mr. Rizzo's email. I heard of what basically was in it. I appreciate him sending it, but I think something like that needs to not happen again, and really clear accountability, not just nice messaging saying, hey, like, you know, we're promoting unity, which is wonderful, I think, in a really great aspirational goal, but having something like that happen in our school district, one that's well respected, is embarrassing, quite frankly. And I hope that we don't ever see something like that again. Thank you.
At this time, there are no further public comments to be heard on Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Rich. In person.
John Yonchuk, 12 Edmonds Drive, Royersford. I want to start by thanking you, Mr. Jackson. I appreciate you bringing this up tonight. It appeared we were going to go the whole meeting without addressing this until you brought it up. And I know the whole community is thinking about it. So I just want to give you kudos for being willing to bring this situation up tonight. For the better part of the summer, though, this board has spent quite a bit of time and energy debating the usefulness of the EDI committee that you all voted to create just last June via Policy 128. Now, though, as confirmed in the public comments on August 16th, you did have a staff member remove the Black Lives Matter sticker at a white constituent's request. And then you did little when one of your students of color was told to go back where they came from in this very room. This board has consistently over the summer signaled with this debate and this actions that it does not value all of its Springford constituents. These actions blew up, as Mr. Jackson noted last week during USA Day, when multiple students, in violation per Mr. Rizzo's email and comments tonight of the rules and guidelines that he circulated, not only brought a racist flag into the school that denigrates immigrants, but then were permitted to parade it in front of a classroom. Several students posted horrifying messages on social media as they were forced to endure this gross display. The situation was only made worse when the administration sent out a letter that in part blamed the victims for how they felt. It was clear that there would be no consequences for violating these rules, which has been par for the course for this board for some time. It's now clear racism is alive and well here in Springford, and the board has signaled that there is little they will do to counteract it, fueling the fire the last 2 months by just asking questions. I remind you that you represent all students and constituents. I also remind you that has been pointed out several times, you are the ultimate authority in the district, not the administration. And this shameful behavior is another example of a failure of your board leadership. Thank you.
Mary Jo McNamara, 187 Abbey Drive, Royersford, PA. I want to talk about Thursday too. I want to talk about it from the perspective of the administration. Can you hear me? Can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm sorry. So Thursday needs to be addressed really relative to EDI, right? So EDI isn't only race related. A Trump flag doesn't equal racism. That's a leap in people's minds for their opinions. I'm not stating what my opinion is, but we have to be really careful, right? So people have feelings. People want to talk about things. It's great that you want to implement a dress code, but a dress code doesn't get rid of it. Because what if when I was growing up, it was Converse sneakers versus Adidas, and kids were getting beat up. So we got to be really, really careful, right? This is a space where we have to institute standards that need to be addressed by our whole student body, and there needs to be a grievance process related to it. People are uncomfortable if somebody brings a flag in. If flags were allowed, they need to take it up with the grievance process, not put, I want to kill myself on social media. It's nonsense. The underlying keyboard bullying that went on related to this picture is horrendous. The whole episode was horrific. We didn't do our due diligence for following protocols for the whole week. Kids were bringing in props all week long. Kids had BLM shirts on USA Day. It was wonderful to see the kids don't only equate red, white, and blue to USA anymore. That's the way it should be. That's the way our world is. We have to address this from a diversity and inclusivity perspective. It's not only related to your constitutional right of what you're allowed to wear. What if I wear a t-shirt that says Phillies versus his NY whatever shirt that's on, right? What happens then? So we have to really address this. It's not accountability. Kids shouldn't be in trouble. We have to address this with the kids' feelings. And we have to lay out a list of standards and protocols that we are able to follow. In addition to the fact that we as parents should teach our children better. Those parents that have kids that are making those horrific responses they should be ashamed of themselves. Thank you.
I like that shirt, Mr. Olson.
You got to be a dad of daughters to appreciate it. Yeah, Roland Olson, 711 Sourwood Lane. Had a bunch of other stuff to talk about, but I'm going to switch gears here. I think, last year I stood here and I wondered, why would anybody oppose a plan that we were working on that fit the needs of everyone and excluded no one? Plan, which ultimately, to their tremendous credit, our administration and our teachers delivered on making Springford the leader at a time where leadership was sorely needed. They delivered, most importantly, on behalf of our children. I couldn't get my arms around or my head around why people would always be opposing a solution for everybody. And, I'm starting to see it. I think I got it. I said, we have people in our school district that will always look to bring Springford down to their level. They think small, they hide behind aliases on social media to personally attack our board members. They send anonymous emails. They take pictures of our kids and use them as weapons to destroy the great programs we have here in Springford. Currently, Spirit Week and youth sports are on their hit list. They promote negativity and divisiveness, but they have no solutions. They haven't gotten a single thing right in the last 20 months. And I think you just should keep that in mind as you listen to their comments. And every time you get an email from them or a nastygram, and every time they step to this podium to pronounce their hate of Springford, you consider do the opposite. Mr. Rizzo, you proposed this testing program. Man, if I heard the guy, come out today and say, I'm full for it, let's test everybody, man, I'm rethinking that program right away. And I know, Ms. Fazzini, you said that, right now, the program is not to test everybody per the other gentleman's objection. But there's people here that want to test everybody all the time, whether they're sick or not. And I think that's something that we have to consider not doing for the simple reasons that you don't test kids that aren't sick. So in closing, we've got problems in our district and we've got people that are causing them. And it's not the people sitting at this table and it's not the good people of Springford. We've got some people that they want to create problems instead of solve them. Thank you. Stick it.
All right, we're not gonna go there tonight. We're not gonna do that. Please do pull up your mask, Mr. Olson, while we're in the room. Please, thank you. Up. Okay. Do we have any other comments in the room this evening?
How's it going? James Troutman, 199 North Limerick Road again. I see dividing the community is going 100% great for you guys. Good job. You're doing a great job with that. The entire state of Pennsylvania, 17 other schools passed this illegal order on the last day of the school morning before the school even started. This is an organized attack on our freedoms and it's fascism at its finest. Giving you the facts and laws are over. I don't want to be your enemy, but your compliance to this is cowardness, plain and simple. If you read the Bible, John 3:18, my children, let us not love with the words or with our lips, but with our truth and in our deeds. Love with the actions. Romans 13:10, love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is fulfilling the law. All this bickering and arguing over t-shirts is beyond ridiculous and it's just a distraction. Matthew 7:12, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law of the prophets. Leviticus 19:13-8 talks about you should not oppose your neighbors or rob him. You should not do injustice in court. You should not be partial to the poor, defer to the rich, but in righteousness you should judge your neighbor. You should not go around and slander your neighbor. You should not stand up against the life of your neighbor. Matthew 5:43, you have heard that this is said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Tom Wolf is the enemy. The parents are your neighbors. Department of Health has zero power here because there's no pandemic going on in Pennsylvania. Teachers, coaches, staff are not pharmaceutical propaganda soldiers. Stick to the Common Core. This is the Common Core. This is all you do. This is it, plain and simple. Taxpayers' money should no longer go towards anything COVID related as it doesn't go to anything towards H1N1, SARS, bird flu, regular flu, or diarrhea. I'd rather my kid not get diarrhea than any of the stuff you guys are talking about. As a father of a warrior princess, take COVID out of the system. Masking women and young girls is just wrong. Seeing it firsthand overseas, masking women is used for a form of obedience and suppression of freedom. This is not what Americans do. For us men, we're on this planet due to the women, so to mask them is totally unacceptable. For not standing up for the kids, totally unacceptable. And don't want my daughter to be discriminated like this. If you want to wear a mask, go with God. But to tell someone to wear a mask and take a medical test, quarantine a healthy kid, but not a healthy kid who has vaccines is totally medical discrimination. You do not do what you want. It is called, or to the doctor, you do not do what you want. It's called checks and balances. You know, you got to go through the right manners. And for everything else, Black Lives Matter shirts, Trump shirts, Fidel Castro shirts, Chinese flag shirts, Russian flag shirts, it's American freedom. I'm a veteran of the United States Supreme Court. Wear whatever you want. Who cares? Back in my day, you weren't allowed to wear Bart Simpson shirts. How ridiculous was that back in the day? Now that you look at it. So, and to the parents, just stop doing it. Stop arguing with these people. It's America. Do what you want. You have the merit, your freedom of speech. Whatever they wear, let them wear it. Who cares? To the parents that are, that are going back and forth, just stop it. Focus on the mask and the COVID. Everything else is just.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Tony Patrick, 410 Marlene Oaks. One, I wanted to say,
Can you pull that mic down, please?
good enough?
Yes.
The cyberbullying that was going on, since I'm just a taxpayer here, I don't get all that information that you guys are getting and sending out. And it's very irritating that I found out one had happened to even the children that wore Just because they wore red, white, and blue on Thursday, how they got harassed. I found that stuff online. That's horrible. And it goes both ways. I saw pictures of people wearing the rainbow flag. Were they harassed? Did anybody come up to them and say, you know, you can't wear that today? We see the parents is sitting here saying that that wasn't allowed because they were red, white, and blue. What happens on President's Day? If you guys said, hey, wear something in for President's Day, are the children allowed to wear something to cover that? And these masks are ridiculous. You guys did not, you excused me last meeting. I was in the other room and I wasn't allowed to speak because you guys weren't told that I was over there. Again, I'm going to talk about my grandchild, Mr. Young Chuck, who's been cyberbullying all of us women in here, calling us twits. Does anybody see that? Are you guys, any of you seen that? Or how about the candidates that are running that are inside and outside without masks on, and they're not even social distancing? And the COVID cases that are approaching here, those children are out there in the open public. Some even flew across the country or out of the country and back in. There should not be any children being tested that are healthy. My grandson was quarantined and he wasn't even near the kid that was out, that had COVID for 10 days out of the house. Now, again, he's verbally stuck orally, like he cannot read and write very clearly because of his speech impediment. But one of them, who is it? The doctor over there last time said how if they're not reading by 3rd grade, then they're already behind. Why don't you check that out? I don't know which doctor you guys were over there because I couldn't see your names. I'm blind too. But it's upsetting that you guys can't even make a decision on the mask. And I don't want any of this COVID testing for healthy children. If they have a cold, and colds do go around. And you, Mrs. Mel, and you were out there in Utah. Did you have a mask on the whole time you were out there? You showed us
This
up on
this
Zoom.
isn't a question and answer.
I know
Are you
it's
finished
not.
with your
I'm just
comment?
making statements. And
That
I
wasn't
just
a
want,
statement,
like,
it was
you
a
guys all
question.
go away and you come back here, were you all tested? Mr. Rizzo, I heard that you had COVID. Is that true? Did you
Again,
get
it's not a
tested
Are we,
before you
question and
got back
answer.
this is
in here?
becoming badgering.
done.
This is
We're
becoming
done.
badgering.
Okay, I'm just saying, this is
Finished.
stuff I
Thank you.
hear as a
We're done.
taxpayer.
Please take a seat.
I didn't hear this
Please
stuff.
take a seat. Chief Boyer,
I will.
we don't
Sir.
talk from the audience either. Is there anybody else that wants to go up?
Good evening. My name is Preston Lutweiler, 2 Woodmont Court. And I think the gentleman who came up with a couple of pages of prepared biblical quotations was about loving your neighbor. It was very interesting because I didn't hear any sense of compassion toward the woman who called with a story about her family getting COVID, probably from the school, from the cafeteria. I think you have to take this virus seriously and your responsibility seriously. The other subject that has been discussed a lot this evening is what happened on Thursday. And thank you, Mr. Jackson, for bringing it up during the board meeting. I can't think of a more cogent example of why this school district needs to be embarking on an EDI program. I understand there's been a lot of discussion about there is no racism in Springford. There are no problems in Springford. You can't say that after what happened on Thursday. I'm sorry. I heard as Ms. Sullivan mentioned that there were some people, some kids who felt so, I guess, put upon or threatened or disgusted, I don't know what it was, that they were thinking about leaving Springford because of what happened on Thursday. And I heard from the audience, some of the same people who were clapping for the preacher say, let him go. the audience watching didn't hear that. I was in the room, I heard it. And I want you to be sure that you heard it. Thank you.
Just want to comment also on some of that, that no one's ever said that there are no problems. We've asked repeatedly, what are the problems? And we have all supported the EDI movement moving forward. So we have that, we're embracing that, and we're looking forward to hearing more and more of the results and addressing the needs that we have. So are there any other comments from the room? Is there?
I was just going to say, I agree with you. I have to agree with Mr. Jackson that, we get accused of a lot of things. And yeah, I ask a lot of questions because I too are looking for the advancement of the programs. We did approve, the money, we approved the policy, we approved the consultants. I approved all that as well. And I asked a lot of questions, and I will continue to ask questions as long as I'm sitting here, because I want to know where this programs are advancing. I want to know what's going on, and I want to know when things are going to happen. I want deliverables. I want to know, and you're right, Colleen, we've asked numerous times. No one sat at this table and said, we don't have issues in the district. We sat at this table and said, we want to know what the issues are. We hear that there's issues and we keep asking, what are the issues? We want to know what's going on. We're trying to get the information. We're trying to get the data. We're trying to get all of that. And that's what Mr. Rizzo and the committee referred to last week with that this is what they're starting to work on. And what Mr. Jackson pointed out many times, we have a lot of people involved, and this has been going on for multiple years, and we're trying to get some steps forward to get, to show progress and say what is going on, what can we address, what do we need to address. That's what that's the biggest issue, right? And that's what we hope to have continue. We all agree that we want it to continue. We all want to see it, be flourish within the district. But I also want to ask Mr. Rizzo, I hear a lot about, but what were the students wearing on Thursday?
I would say there were a lot of things. Just primarily, the bulk of our students were, I think Dr. Collier gave a percentage that we had a high 80% of our students participating in that day at the 10 through 12 or 9 through 12. Excuse me. So primarily they were wearing red, white, and blue patriotic type attire. There were some that were wearing Trump banners, as there were some that were wearing the American flag as a cape. There were some that were dressed in all black. There were some that were dressed. So there was a variety of people dressed in different ways. There were certainly Trump shirts. There were Biden shirts. There were Obama shirts. There was a lot of different things on display. That's what you're going at. Is that what you need?
No, I just want to, we're hearing, and I just want to make sure, understand what was that attire. And I agree that moving forward that this was probably something that was unforeseen that was going to happen, because I don't remember it happening in previous years, but I agree with that, we need to have these whatever you want to call it, Spirit Week dress code policy. We want to make sure that they're adhered to, but we also need to probably look at things and make stating that there are no flags, there are no banners, there's and it's across the board, so that we don't run into this again. But we also have to have some leadway as allowing students to express their feelings, their beliefs, their thoughts.
I think one of the most offensive ones was the one that's somebody kept holding a banner that said "Build the Wall."
Right, I'm not.
I think the "Build the Wall" thing was the broke the camel's back.
I get that. I'm not saying. What I'm saying is that it's something that I believe wasn't expected, and moving forward, we have to make sure that that's banned across the board. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not going to say what's offensive and not offensive. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to get into that debate. I'm saying that moving forward, that we have to establish and say no flags, no banners, unless there's some type of approval process in place.
Well, I think Dr. Collier needs to get his arms around the high school, or we need to put somebody there who will. Simple as that.
Aditi and I would like to add a little bit to this, since it is such a student-focused issue. And speaking as someone who was there, I can say that it did cause a disruption to the educational environment. And I think that that is more important than the actual messaging that was on the garment or item. And I think that that is important as we move forward, that it doesn't need to be a completely universal decision that is made, and that the disruption that it poses to the students who are trying to learn in school is something that needs to be considered as these incidents are evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to that, like in the matter that I believe the spring forward policy is to prevent like pieces of clothing that inhibit the education process, but also like, I know some people in the public commented upon the right as a freedom of speech and expression. I guess even though that does go against, but I think the main thing here is that when people wear clothes that are representing their diverse political beliefs, that also invites some, I guess, negativity within the students, like bullying and hostility among students. So that's another reason why we need to, I guess, stay away from these kinds of things. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you both for weighing in on that, because I think it's important that we do hear the student perspective. Typically, my understanding, Mr. Rizzo, is that Spirit Week and the days that take place are, I wouldn't say creative, but they're guided by the students and their choice of what they want to do. At no point do I think that the administration ever thought that it would go down that road, but in some ways, I think it was a mirror image of the divisiveness of our country. And here at Springford, we're not going to do that. We're going to unify, we're going to unite, and we're going to pull together. So we're not going to pull anything in, whether it's Trump, Biden, Obama, whatever. We don't need the political overtones, is what I think. But again, we're bored, and I'd like to see the administration, I'd like to see Dr. Collier really tighten that belt and say, okay, we're not going to take anything for granted. We're not going to assume anything. Here are the specific guidelines for how the events go going forward. But Mr. Rizzo, do you want to comment on that about the student-driven?
Sure. So my understanding is the Spirit Week is a student-selected week of activities. They have a list to choose from, let's say 20 or 30 activities, something along those lines, and they pick the days that they want to use for that week. So this was a student-selected process based on a lot of options available to them.
But as we've all commented, we'll look to see that the parameters are set so that everyone enjoys the day and pulls together rather than pulls apart.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say one final thing as far as Dr. Collier and his role in Spirit Week. There were several announcements made before and after Spirit Week about the expectations and exactly what could and could not be worn, what could and could not be brought into the school. So those precautions were taken prior to the incident. And that's just something that I wanted to add.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys speaking up and really appreciate also what you said. I do think it should be the district's primary role and responsibility to educate and create a inclusive, sort of supportive environment to do that. And we want to have fun and have really great Spirit Week opportunities, but at the same time, if we can't do that without disrupting our primary role, we really have to, should follow through with consequences.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And with that, are there any other comments in the room? We already did Zoom, so I'm not going to revisit that, but are there any other public comments in the room? Oh, okay, or Mr. Jackson? Okay. And then there
Can we
is,
close public comment then?
we are closing public comment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
So moved.
Okay, meeting adjourned.